Bobby Jones came from a family of athletes, as his mom, dad, and older brother were all former hoopers. Since he was pretty tall as a high schooler, his dad pushed him to play basketball, although he was more interested in track. Bobby played well enough to get a scholarship to North Carolina, as he went, in his own words, just to get a free education. He became an All-American and Olympic silver medalist before getting drafted by the Denver Nuggets of the ABA in 1974. Bobby prided himself on the defensive end. Although he only weighed about 210 pounds, he could hold his own in the paint with the bigs, but play out on the perimeter and guard the opposing team's best forward, as his long arms allowed him to block shots and disrupt passing lanes. On the offensive side of the ball, he was a great passer and a solid jump shooter from the elbow. Don't let him get a full head of steam, as he could rise up and posterize defenders at the rim. He was an all-star and MVP candidate in Denver before he was traded to the Sixers, where he was more than happy to come off the bench. Bobby would become one of the best six men ever, prioritizing team success over everything. You can guarantee he would have something in every part of the box score. As the most impressive part of all this was that he suffered from a heart condition and epilepsy that he had to take medications for. Bobby was one of the most underrated players of all time, as he was an important piece of the Sixers title run in 1983, overcoming his health issues to have a Hall of Fame career. Welcome to PC Hoops, and let's get down to it. Bobby was born December 18th, 1951 in Akron, Ohio, but his family was settled down in Charlotte once he was in middle school. His whole family were athletes, as his dad was a former basketball player at the University of Oklahoma, his mother was a dominant tennis and basketball player in high school, and his older brother was an all-state basketball player as well. Despite this athletic background, Bobby really wasn't interested in basketball, but his father made him join the church league and would assign him specific drills to complete while he was at work. By the time Bobby got to high school, he was a starter on varsity as a sophomore, but he was succeeding in track and field as well. He would win the state high jump title twice, losing to Bob McAdoo as a junior. He was also doing pretty well on the hardwood, earning the Charlotte Player of the Year award in his junior year, leading his team to the state playoffs, where they would lose to Bob McAdoo in Greensboro. But in his senior season, Bobby would win a state title. Even with all his basketball success, he didn't really see a future for himself in the sport. So when he committed to North Carolina, he initially did it just to get a free education. Since he couldn't play varsity yet, he would dominate on the JV team, averaging 22 points and 15 rebounds in 16 games. When the sophomore year came around, the Tar Heels had a familiar face in his high school rival Bob McAdoo, as well as future coaching legend George Karl. The Tar Heels started the season 10-0 before losing a close game to Duke. They would finish the season 21-4 going into the conference tournament. Bobby averaged 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 2.5 assists on 67% shooting, which was an ACC single-season record. The Tar Heels would easily get past Duke and Maryland to win the ACC title, facing South Carolina in their first tournament game. They beat the Gamecocks by 23, as Bobby had 5 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists off the bench. He had 4 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists in their next win over Penn. He got the start against Florida State, but North Carolina would lose by 4, as he put up 9 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists. In the summer of 1972, Bobby had the opportunity to join Team USA, as he had several college stars at the time, like Doug Collins, Mike Bannum, Tom Henderson, and Tommy Burleson. His coach, Dean Smith, had to make sure he was healthy, as he recently had an epileptic seizure, but he was cleared to compete. They would get all the way to the gold medal game, but they would lose in controversial fashion to the Soviet Union, as Bobby averaged 6 points a game. McAdoo left for the NBA, but the Tar Heels recruited a solid big man in Mitch Kupchak. Bobby got a bigger role, but North Carolina would lose a lot more this year, even falling to Miami, Ohio at home, entering the conference tournament at 21-6. Bobby averaged 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists on 60% shooting, making the all-conference second team, but the Tar Heels would lose to Wake Forest in overtime, as they wouldn't make the tournament this year, falling to Notre Dame before beating Alabama in the consolation game. Bobby was selected by the Carolina Cougars of the ABA after the season, but he elected to stay and work on his game. The Tar Heels recruited freshman Walter Davis and Tom Lagarde in 1973. They had a couple of 5-game winning streaks this year, but they lost to NC State 3 times, as the Wolfpack were beating everyone this year. They finished the regular season at 20-4. Bobby averaged 16 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists on 58% shooting, as he was named a second-team All-American. North Carolina would lose in the second round of the ACC tournament to Maryland, before losing to Purdue in the first round of the NIT. Bobby was selected 5th overall in 1974 by the Houston Rockets, while the former Cougars, now St. Louis Spirits, held his ABA draft rights. Larry Brown, who previously coached the Cougars, was now the coach of the Denver Nuggets, and he orchestrated a trade to get Bobby, sending St. Louis the rights to draft Marvin Barnes. Bobby had a choice between the two leagues, but he chose the ABA as he had an easier route to playing time. The Nuggets had a nice squad, featuring the high-scoring duo of Ralph Simpson and Matt Calvin, a solid big man in Mike Green, and an elite defensive guard off the bench in Fatty Taylor. Bobby would start at the 4 and show the versatility that he didn't get to fully display in college. Along with his 26 double-doubles, he would have 22 games with 5 or more assists, 15 games with 3 or more steals, and 17 games with 3 or more blocks, with his best game of the season coming against the Pacers on March 30th with 32 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 blocks. Simpson and Calvin both put up 20 points a game as Denver's fast-paced offense was the best in the league as they finished 65-19. Bob's rookie season saw him average 15 points, 8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks on a league-leading 60% shooting as he finished 4th in MVP voting and runner-up behind Marvin Barnes for Rookie of the Year, also making his first of 11 straight all-defensive teams. The Nuggets faced the Utah Stars in their division finals. Bobby put up 12 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block in Game 1 win. He put up similar stats over the next 5 games as the Nuggets win in 6. Denver faced Indiana in the division finals as this was a back-and-forth 7-game series, with Bobby dropping 17 points and 20 rebounds in Game 4, but the Nuggets would lose as George McGinnis averaged 31 points, 15 rebounds, and 9 assists in the series. Denver was able to add some elite talent in 1975 as they were able to get the star rookie from NC State, David Thompson. They also made a trade with the Memphis Sounds for the high-scoring big Dan Issel. Bob continued his great all-around play, as in the 5th game of the season, he flirted with a quadruple-double with 10 points, 18 rebounds, 9 assists, and 7 blocks, along with his only career triple-double in the next game with 14 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. He dropped 38 double-doubles, including back-to-back 20-rebound games in December. He would average 15 points, 9.5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks, leading the league again with a 58% shooting clip. David Thompson averaged 26 points a game as a rookie, while Issel averaged 23 and 11. Denver's top-ranked offense led them to a 16-24 record, facing the Kentucky Colonels in the semifinals. This was a tough series that went the distance, with Denver winning by 23, as Bobby averaged 12.5 points, 9 rebounds, and 4.5 assists on 60% shooting, making the second-team All-ABA, his first All-Star game, as finishing as the runner-up for MVP to Dr. J. The Nuggets faced the Nets in the finals, but they had no answer for Dr. J, as he averaged 39 points through the first 5 games. But the Nuggets were up by 14 going into the fourth quarter of Game 6. New York went on a 34-14 run to win the game in the finals. In what would be the last game in ABA history, Bobby put up 4 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. Denver mainly kept the same roster for their first NBA season, adding Matt Calvin, Marvin Webster, and Willie Wise for depth. Bobby would have no problem adjusting to the NBA, averaging 15 points, 9 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2.5 steals, and 2.5 blocks on 57% shooting in the first 20 games. He put up 23 double-doubles this year, as he made his second straight All-Star appearance. Thompson and Issel were still dominating, as Denver had the second best offense in the league, and they weren't bad defensively either, as they were first in assists and blocks. In his first NBA season, Bobby averaged 15 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks, establishing himself as an elite stopper, finishing with the best defensive rating in the league. The Nuggets finished 50-32, facing Portland in the semifinals. The Blazers were on their title run this year, so they beat Denver in 6, as Bobby's best performance was a near 5-by-5 game, with 17 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 7 steals, and 4 blocks in a Game 3 loss. 1978 was more the same for Denver, but Bobby started pretty well, dropping 26 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks in the season opener. He had 21 double-doubles, making his third straight All-Star game. He was still one of the best defenders in the league, dropping 24 games with 3 or more steals and 17 games with 3 or more blocks, including a career-high 8 blocks on January 17th against the Cavs. David Thompson was second in the league with 27 points a game, while Bobby averaged 14.5 points, 8.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks on a league-leading 58% shooting. Denver's defense was one of the worst in the league, but their offense helped them to a 48-34 record, so they faced the Bucks in the semifinals. This was a back-and-forth series, but Bobby filled up the stat sheet in Game 7, dropping 10 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. However, his epilepsy was getting worse, and his medication was affecting his play, especially in the conference finals against Seattle, as he averaged 10 points, 8 rebounds, and less than a steal and a block per game, and Seattle won in 6. The Nuggets were concerned about Bobby's health, and they wanted to go in a different direction, so they traded him to the Sixers for George McGinnis, with the teams exchanging draft picks and both players waiving their no-trade clauses, with another clause stating that should Jones be disabled due to his epilepsy, Philly would receive another draft pick. The Sixers had tried the duo of McGinnis and Irving for a few years, but it was clear that it wasn't going to work, so they opted for defense in the acquisition of Jones. Along with Irving, the Sixers had a nice backcourt with sharpshooter Henry Bibby and defensive ace Mo Cheeks. Doug Collins was a great scorer and passer, along with 2 solid bigs in Caldwell Jones and Darryl Dawkins. Bobby would start at power forward and put up solid production, averaging 11 points and 7 rebounds in the first 20 games. He dropped 30 points, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks in a loss to Phoenix on January 6th, followed by a career-high 33 points on 13 of 14 shooting on March 7th against Boston. Dr. J was still carrying the team, especially after Doug got hurt halfway through the season, so the Sixers didn't have a lot of other offensive talent, but their defense was elite, as 5 players finished in the top 20 for defensive rating. Bobby's first season in Philly saw him average 12 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1 steal, and a block. The Sixers finished 47-35, facing the Nets in the first round, but Bobby's epilepsy was flaring up again, as his symptoms limited him to only about 18 minutes a game. He was still contributing though, putting up 12 points and 4 rebounds on 50% shooting in the 2-game sweep by Philly. The Spurs were next, but Bobby got back to his usual role, even dropping 20 points in games 2 and 3. But the Spurs got 60 points from their young duo and they stuck out a 3-point win in game 5. Mo Cheeks would emerge as an elite passer and defender in 1979, while rookie Clint Richardson would be forced into a bigger role due to Doug struggling with injuries. Bobby went into a full-time 6-man role as Philly opted to start Jones and Dawkins for defensive purposes. Initially, Coach Billy Cunningham thought that Bobby would object to coming off the bench, but it would take him only about a minute and a half to agree with this decision. In his new role, he became one of the best reserves in the league, dropping 11 double-doubles, with his best game being a 26-point, 6-rebound outing against Houston. He would average 13 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.5 blocks, as Dr. J's MVP-level season combined with their top defense led them to a 59-23 record. They blazed through the first 3 rounds, only losing twice, as Bobby still put up 14 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2 blocks on 53% shooting, as the Sixers made the NBA Finals, facing off against the Lakers and their star duo of Kareem and Magic. Bobby dropped 15 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks off the bench, but the Lakers shot 54% in a 7-point win. Daryl Dawkins had one of the best games of his career in Game 2, dropping 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 steals, as Philly won a close game on the road. Kareem dropped 33 and 14 in Game 3 as LA won. Bobby had a nice Game 4 with 11 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks, as the Sixers only won by 3, despite shooting 52%. Kareem dropped 40 and Magic dropped a triple-double as the Lakers took Game 5. Kareem had sprained his ankle in Game 5 and he would miss Game 6, as Philly saw this as an opportunity to force a Game 7, but Magic would play one of the best finals games in NBA history, when he started as center, spending time at all 5 positions during the game, dropping 42 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals as the Lakers won the title in Philly. The Sixers would draft Andrew Toney in 1980, as he would replace the scoring loss by Doug Collins' injury-riddled season. Bobby's rebounding would drop this year, but he was still solid defensively, dropping 4 games with 3 more steals and 6 games with 3 more blocks. He was a nice offensive player as well, dropping 10 20-point games. But Philly was rolling, as they now had the top defense in the league, led by an MVP season from Dr. J. Bobby would make the All-Star team for the first time in 3 years, and even finish top 25 in MVP voting, averaging 13.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1 steal and a block. The 62-20 Sixers would breeze past the Pacers in the first round, before facing the up-and-coming Bucks. But they would be tested, surviving a 36-point explosion from Marcus Johnson in a 1-point Game 7 win. The Celtics stood in the way of another finals appearance, and they were an extremely tough matchup, but rookie guard Andrew Toney would make a name for himself in this series, dropping 26 in Game 1 and 35 in Game 2. Games 4 through 6 were decided by 2 points or less, as it was tied going into Game 7 in the Boston Garden. Larry Bird would dominate, dropping 23 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 steals to will Boston to victory. Bobby averaged about 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks in this series. Daryl Dawkins was dealing with injuries, and the Sixers were thin in the front court, so Bobby became a starter in 1981. He would have his best scoring season in 5 years, making his second straight All-Star game. He would drop 14 20-point games, and even 11 games with 5 or more assists. He averaged 14.5 points, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.5 blocks. Toney would emerge as a great scorer for the Sixers, as they finished 58-24, getting past the Hawks and the Bucks in the first 2 rounds. Andrew Toney would break out against the Bucks, dropping 30 in Game 2, 39 in Game 4, and 34 in Game 7, as the Sixers made it back to the finals, facing the Lakers again. The series was tied through the first 2, even though Toney averaged 32 points through the next 3 games. Philly was down 3-2 going into Game 6, as Bobby would start, dropping 7 points and 7 rebounds on 2 of 8 shooting, as the Sixers won the game and the series. Philly had been on the cusp of a title for the past few years, and they made a huge push towards that in 1982 when they traded for Moses Malone, giving them another star in the front court. Bobby would have an even lesser role, but he was fine with it, He failed to crack 20 points or grab 10 boards this year, but he still provided solid inside scoring and defense off the bench, putting up double figures in 35 games. Tony had broken out as a star, and Moses Malone was as good as advertised, even winning the MVP. The Sixers still sent 4 players to the All-Star game, as Bobby was finally recognized for his bench play, winning the first Sixth Man of the Year award, even finishing third behind Tree Rollins and Sidney Moncrief for the brand new Defensive Player of the Year award. Bobby averaged 9 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal and a block. The Sixers were looking unbeatable this year though, finishing 65-17. They swept the Knicks in the semifinals, and they easily beat Milwaukee in 5, facing the Lakers in the finals again. But they were ready this year. Bobby was providing about 13 points a game, along with 4 blocks in Game 1 and 4 steals in Game 4, as Philly shocked everyone and swept the Lakers, capturing their first title since 1967. Tony would have the best season of his career in 1983, as the Sixers were set to defend their title. Bobby continued to produce in his bench role, even putting up 19 points, 5 rebounds, 7 steals, and 2 blocks on December 4th against Boston. He would drop 11 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, and 6 blocks on February 1st against the Pacers. He would finish the season averaging 8.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.5 blocks, as Philly faced the Nets in the first round. After being blown out at home in the first 2 games, the Sixers would win both games on the road to tie the series. However, Michael Ray Richardson would have an amazing Game 6 with 24 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 6 steals as New Jersey won, beating the defending champs in the first round. Bobby had a solid showing in the loss though, with 12 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 blocks. The Sixers drafted Charles Barkley in 1984, and this further cut into Bobby's playing time, but he was still a valuable rotation player. His season best performance was a 17-point, 3-steal, and 2-block game on April 5th against the Bulls. He averaged 7.5 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal, as the Sixers were still an elite team, finishing 58-24. They easily beat the Bullets in 4 games, as well as sweeping the Bucks to face the Celtics again in the conference finals. Dr. J would have a terrible series by his standard, only averaging 14 points on 32% shooting, as Boston easily won the series in 5. Now that Dr. J was 35 and Moses was 30, this was the Sixers' final shot at another ring. Bobby would start his most games since 1981, but he was only getting about 20 minutes a game. He did drop 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists on 9 of 11 shooting against the Clippers. Bobby averaged 7 points, 2.5 rebounds, 2 assists, half a steal, and half a block. Barkley had established himself as a top NBA player, forming a nice frontcourt duo with Moses, as they led Philly to a 54-28 record, facing the Bullets in the first round. Bobby had averaged 9 points and 1.5 blocks, as the Sixers beat Washington in 5. Philly faced a familiar foe in Milwaukee, but Bobby was producing well, even putting up 23 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks on 7 of 9 shooting in Game 6, but he would only drop 3 points in Game 7 as they lost. Bobby would retire at the end of the season, as he had a great reputation amongst his peers, receiving high praise from Dr. J and Larry Brown for his intense effort and selflessness. Bobby would become one of the first athletes to wear Air Force Ones, as Nike's marketing campaign dubbed him the Secretary of Defense. Philly retired his jersey soon after he retired, as he even has a statue of him at the Sixers training complex. But after 33 years, he was finally recognized for his underrated career, being named to the Hall of Fame in 2019. Bobby Jones was never an amazing scorer, but he was athletic enough to run the floor for easy transition buckets, while you had to respect his mid-range jump shot. But defense was his specialty, as he was named to an all-defensive team in 11 out of his 12 seasons. He selflessly came off the bench, even after several All-Star seasons in Denver, helping Philly win a title and even being rewarded for his bench play. Bobby impacted the game in so many ways, and he was a true definition of a winner, putting team success over everything. You can bet that Bobby would contribute in every category and would do whatever was needed to win. His stats might not jump out at you, but everyone knew how important Bobby was to the Sixers, making him one of the most underrated players in NBA history. Thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate you guys. I've just been really busy with schoolwork, man, but I'm finally dropping this. It took me a minute to get this script done because there was a lot of information I had to get. But I really appreciate you guys for all the support. Thank you. You have a great day. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Please be safe, stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.